also what I offered on the personal side. And for me, I had a personal, I thought it was a personal charge and a personal belief that financial literacy should be something that everyone should have access to, no matter what walk of life they come from. And that led me to develop this nonprofit.
That's amazing. In terms of your impressive career, I just want to hear a little bit more about what kind of motivated you to start Dream and what kind of impact it has achieved so far.
Yeah. So what motivated me to start Dream was stupidity. I say that with all sincerity because I remember back in 2008 when I was thinking about what I want to do with my career. Again, I'm a few months out of undergrad, and I'm thinking about impact and legacy. Most people don't think about that until they're retired and they're in their like third C-suite role, and then like, okay, now I'll build a foundation. So early on in my career, I was thinking about what my legacy was going to be, but also what I wanted to give back to society, not just take out of it. um, well, I was fortunate that I had all of the opportunities to learn about the capital markets through my professional career. I didn't learn about money at home, and so I'm born and raised in Brooklyn from a lower income family, a single mother, and dining room conversations around money management, the stock market, real estate that weren't conversations we were having. However, when I got to college, when I got to Trinity, I met people and I realized that a lot of my classmates were having those conversations, right? Their parents were talking to them about the stock market. Their parents had been investing for them. And so I realized I was at a huge disadvantage from that standpoint. And so a lot of my personal finance education was self-taught, meaning I was getting every book that I can out the library. I was reading, everything I could on the internet. And yes, we had the internet back then. I was reading everything on the internet that I could find, and I was doing that organically just to learn what people and kids in my class had been learning since they were 5 years old. I was having to learn that at 18, 19 years old. And of course, making a lot of mistakes doing so, right? And so as I graduated, I thought that what I went through, no one should go through. And tons of people go through that today, right? But to me, the area of financial illiteracy and what is arguably a huge driving factor of the wealth gap is all around misinformation, the lack of information. And it's a huge topic, right? There's a lot to do and a lot to grapple, a lot to tackle around this topic. But I thought my contribution to that conversation, or to helping with this, with this worldwide and national problem, was to figure out how could I give information that I was getting from my professional career and give that information back to inner city youth and to people who had no access to that information. And so essentially, how could I humanize finance, right? Finance is a very daunting topic. People hate talking about money in certain communities. We're kind of taught not to talk about it, as become a very taboo topic. Um, and I just thought that there was something I could do, even early in my career. There's something that I could do to give someone some information that I didn't have. And so if at 21 years old, graduating, my first Wall Street job, if I know about stocks, there's probably a kid in my neighborhood in Brooklyn who didn't know about stocks. So this most simplest thing I could do is go and give that information back to that kid who could benefit from it at age 14. I wish the way I wish I could have benefited with it at that age. And so that was the driving force behind starting Dream. But I say stupidity, and so is because remember thinking about this idea, someone was like, the world doesn't need another nonprofit. How about you just volunteer at another organization that's already doing it, volunteer your time once or twice, and you'll feel better. And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, I want to build my own thing. A, because again, stupidity. I learned the hard way. And B, just because there were other organizations, and there still are organizations out there in the world today that are teaching financial literacy. But it was very important for me to speak to and target and connect with a demographic that of folks who look like me and come from backgrounds similar to mine, in which I could share information in a way that's largely been hidden to them or hidden from them, if you will. And so I didn't want to just go out and just volunteer to another organization, because no other organization I found was doing it and teaching it in the way that I thought resonated with those communities. And so that's what led me to build my own. Now, I didn't really start off wanting to be like the founder and CEO of a nonprofit. That really wasn't the idea. I just wanted to teach people about money. And so ended up on a path of starting a nonprofit, but the early stages of what became Dream was really just me having phone conversations with like nieces and nephews or neighbors. They asked me a question about, I'm looking for a new savings account. Can you help? Really just started that organically and then branched out and became, more formalized. And then we got named, then we got a website and all the things that go along with starting a company. That's all a nonprofit is. It's just a company that doesn't make money. That's all it is. And so, but it's probably been the most fulfilling thing that I've done in my professional career is start the nonprofit.
Yeah, and I mean that's extremely rewarding, and I think we can all resonate with not knowing a lot about financial literacy because interestingly enough, they don't really teach that in school, and it's
They
one of the
should.
things. Yeah. I just want to move along to more of like the financial advice portion. We'd love to hear about what students should be doing and expecting. So for those just embarking on their career or planning ahead for it, what are some financial guidance that you can offer in terms of maybe some common financial traps that students might encounter, or how these could be avoided?
Good question. Let me give everyone a disclaimer to start, right? This is not financial advice, right? You should consult with a personal financial advisor, a tax advisor, an accountant to ascertain your particular financial situation. And so I'm going to speak very general, but just please understand I'm offering financial tips, but it's not meant to be individual personal financial advice. That's just a broad disclaimer. So Nicole, to answer your question, some things that I would advise people to do, let's say two part. Let's start with things that I'd advise people to do maybe in college already, right? Junior, senior year, even before that. And so one of the best things I think about being a college student, and perhaps probably the thing that's probably most frustrating is that you don't have any money, generally speaking. You don't have any money, right? At no other point in time in life will you be this broke. And that's a good thing, right? Because being broke actually teaches you a lot about money management. The best time to learn budgeting and the best time to learn really good financial skills is actually when you have no money. And so for those of you who do get an allowance or do get some sort of financial assistance from family members or your parents, or you're doing work study and you're earning a paycheck on campus through, some sort of work study compensation, or you've decided to start some sort of entrepreneurial venture, you have a couple of dollars coming in, use this as a time to start to learn how to budget, right? You may only be budgeting $100 a week. You may only be budgeting $50 a week. However, this is a great time to develop the skill of knowing how to set up a budget, knowing how to manage a budget, and knowing what to do when you mismanage a budget. Why? Because it's a very low stakes environment, meaning you don't have a lot of money to lose because you don't have a lot of income. So it's a great opportunity. And so I would say if you haven't started already budgeting yet, you need to start. You need to start just practicing the skill of budgeting, because if you do it now and you get good at it now, whenever you transfer to the workforce and after graduation, you already have the muscle memory, you already have the skill set, you already have your budget tool set up, whatever app you're going to use, you'll know your way around it. If you do spreadsheets to budget, which I do, I'm very old school in that manner. You already have your spreadsheet set up. And so these are all things you can start in college. You don't have to wait until you graduate to start budgeting. You actually don't. So that's the first thing I'll say is start budgeting now. The second thing I think you could do, which is really important that a lot of people overlook, is after the age of 18, you can start to invest on your own. You don't need a parent. You don't need a parent to have an investment account after the age of 18. And so a lot of people, believe it or not, start buying their first stock in college, right? Again, you're not going to be, you're not running a hedge fund. You're not trying to start an investment fund in your dorm room. That's not what I'm advocating. But if you do have the opportunity and you have a little bit of excess income at the end of your budget, which is what we call discretionary income, you can use a couple of those dollars to actually start to invest in the market, right? And so I'm not recommending any individual stocks or any individual investments in particular, but you can use some of that money to start investing. And it's really important that you do, because the earlier that you get, again, the same muscle memory, the earlier that you get into the habit of understanding how to invest, how to log onto a website, how to research an investment, how to research a stock, how to research a bond, how to research a mutual fund or an ETF. The earlier and the sooner you get that experience, the better, because again, if you start to do that for the first time post-graduation. Not that you're too late, but just think about how much better you are practicing something for 3 years or 2 years versus doing something for the first time when you're 21 and you feel like you have a lot of pressure. So use college as a very low stakes environment to practice these early financial skills, because these are habits and these are skill sets that you would use post graduation as you start to getting a career that are very useful to you, and you want to be good at them early on.
Yeah, it's very important. And going back to budgeting, sounds easy when you're in college because you don't really have any bills or rent to pay. So I'm just thinking like if you're in debt, which brings us more to like the another common money challenger, which is student loan debts. Do you have any overall tips on how you can budget, or how students can tackle this area if applicable?
Yeah, so it's pretty hard to address the student loan sort of overhang when you're in school, right? You don't have enough income. Well, the student loans aren't accruing yet, right? So you don't have the actual student loan payments to be made. And two, um, it's pretty hard to budget for that future expense because you don't have it in front of you. So in college, it's really hard to think about and game plan for student loan debt, but which is tough, right? Because the minute you graduate, boom, right? You get a little bit of a grace period, and then the payment that grace period wears off, and then the payments start. And so I think it's important to understand the parameters of your loan, right? So things you should know as a college student is just how much your student loans are, like the total dollar amount. You should know that. Like if someone asks you your birthday, you should know how much student loans you have. Because arguably for most people, student loan debt will be the most debt that you will have for the foreseeable future, right? Until you get a mortgage, student loan debt will probably be the most important number in your life. And so you need to know how much debt you are taking on or will be taking on come graduation as a result of you pursuing your education, first and foremost. The second number, or the second set of numbers you want to know, are what are the interest rates of your student loans. Believe it or not, a lot of people today, even adults, 50 years old, 60 years old, do not know the interest rate of their student loans, which is pretty embarrassing. Why? Because there's a lot of opportunity for saving money, and there's a lot of opportunity for improving your finances if you know the interest rate on various types of debt, right? And so if you don't know the interest rate of your student loans, you have no clue if you should refinance. Refinance simply means if you have an interest rate on a debt that's 10%, and you can take out a loan at 5%, right? You can refinance to a lower interest rate from a higher interest rate. That's what refinancing is. And unless you know the interest rate of your student loan, you will know if there's an opportunity for you to refinance, right? And so those are numbers that you should know as a student. You should know them as an adult after you graduate, but they're very simple to look up, right? You just know how much debt you're going to have, how much debt you currently have, how much debt you will have, what's the interest rate on that debt. Now, what you can do with that information post graduation is very powerful, right? Because now you can plan out your payments. You can plan out your student loan payments. You can decide what payment plan you want to go on. If you want to go on an income-based payment plan, you can decide. You can do math, and you can figure out. All the calculators online will tell you how quickly you could pay off student loans if you pay $1 or more for each payment. If you pay $10 more each payment, what all that would do to how quickly you could pay off your loans. And then also, because you know the interest rate, you'll be able to understand, are there any opportunities for you to refinance your student loans into lower interest payments, because you're well versed and you fully understand where the interest rates are at that point in time and where your interest rates are on your debt. And so that is something that you can do as a student around student debt that can help you in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of like death and things of that sorts, I kind of think a lot about credit cards. And I think personally it's tricky for me because I get a bunch of credit cards in the mail and I'm like, do I take it? What are all these APR things? Like, I feel like it's very tricky and really hard to get around. So I'm just hoping you could give us some advice about maybe how many credit cards you should have, how to manage them, and kind of what's a good take on building a good credit score.
Good questions. I actually fundamentally do not recommend college students have a credit card in their own name. I really don't, because I've seen one too many friend, personal friend, people I've coached in my career as a financial coach that have gotten into really bad financial trouble or really bad financial situation, all from debt, credit card debt that they took on as a student. So I don't recommend it. If you can avoid it, you should. I don't believe any student should have a credit card in their name. Now, some things you can do if you do need a credit card, and what is an interesting opportunity if you have that family dynamic, is your parent or your guardian can make you an authorized user on their credit card. And what that allows is that it allows you to have credit. You could also you're almost leveraging your parents' credit to build your credit, and they can put a limit on your spending on your credit card. And so, in the event that you do need to use your credit card for any reason, it's in a more supervised manner. And so that is the route I actually recommend, is becoming an authorized user on a parent, on one of your parent or your guardian's credit cards, versus going out and starting your own credit history by taking out a credit card. If you do find yourself in the camp, and everyone has different familial situations, and I'm very sensitive to that. So if you find yourself in a camp where you cannot rely on a parent or guardian to open a credit card for you or become an authorized user on their credit card, and you do absolutely need to open a credit card, I don't recommend doing more than one. So you only need one credit card, not more than anything. More than one credit card is overkill. I would say, as a college student, and even probably early on post graduation, you only need one credit card. And I would actually, some credit cards will do this organically, but other credit cards you have to set it up. I would actually put a spending limit, on a very, very low spending limit on your card, because again, you don't want to find yourself with a credit card that has a $20,000 limit, and you find yourself just swiping, swiping, swiping. Next thing you know, you're $20,000 in debt, right? So if you are going to get a credit card, get something with a really low limit, like $1,000 limit, so that, again, $1,000 is a lot to pay back when you don't have any money or you have very low income. So that's a lot, but it's an opportunity for you to have credit to the extent that you need it, and also build your credit score that way as well. And even if you take out that singular credit card, I would only use it for emergency. So I wouldn't I wouldn't carry it all the time. I would leave it in my dorm room, locked up, of course, in a secure place, or it's not something I would walk around with. Or if you're going to the bar, I wouldn't have a credit card on me and say, "All drinks on me, round on me." No, that's not what your credit card is for. Your credit card should only for emergencies in which you really, really, really don't have any other financial choice, and that is your only option. It really shouldn't be the first card you go to, or your first tool, if you will, in your finances. Whenever you find yourself in a situation, you really want it to be a last resort option. And so that's how I would treat credit for the foreseeable future. As you graduate and as you become a little more savvy with managing your money, then there's some really cool things about credit cards that you can do, right? You get the opportunity to build points, and get the opportunity, to get air miles. And there's a lot of things that you can do where credit cards are actually great tools. You actually can save a lot of money using credit cards if you're able to be savvy enough and use them wisely. However, you have to crawl before you walk. And so early on as a college student, please stay away from them. And if you must, uh, use them very, very cautiously, because again, I can't stress this enough. I've seen a lot of people ruin their finances before they were even 21, all because of mistakes they made with a college, or with a credit card as a college student. So stay away from it.
Yeah, that's important and different aspect. I think that people should hear more often.
Yeah.
It's a big responsibility. And in terms of big responsibilities, another thing that comes with starting a new job or even a summer job or internship is the responsibilities of taxes. And that's been really tricky for me after my internship. I didn't know I had to do it. So I think a lot of students might be having trouble doing them, don't really know where to start. So what should one be aware of in this area?
Good question. I think the first thing you should be aware of, you have to pay them. You can't avoid taxes. So some people are surprised by that, believe it or not. Like, you get your first internship check and you're like, wait a minute, why is half of it gone? Well, that's tax, right? And so that's the first thing, right? Everyone should be mindful and aware that there are taxes to be paid anytime you get income. or formal income, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is understanding, what a W-2 is, right? You want to know what that tax form is, and everyone, if after you have worked for a year, your employer will send you a W-2. You need to know what a W-4 is. A W-4 is the document you fill out when you start a new job, and that essentially tells the employer how to tax you, or how the government will tax you. So the W-4 is almost like an instruction guide to your employer to say, this is how much money should be taken out of my check every month or every paycheck, right? That's what a W-4 is. The other interesting thing about a W-4, though, is that although there are pre-selected boxes that you can fill out, like single, head of household, they're all, you can check, 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 check. You kind of figure it out. You can hand it back. It's also important to really know your individual and your personal financial situation, because there may be more nuance to your taxation, or how you should be doing deductions or how you think about deductions on through your W-4. That's where it's really important to work with an accountant, or really important to work with a tax professional, because they can help you and advise you as you fill out your W-4 in terms of what you should be selecting. Should you be selecting head of household? Should you not? Should you select single? Should you not? And so it's really important not to do that on your own and just on a whim. It's really important that you consult an accountant or a tax advisor when it comes to filling out those documents. And then I think what's also important to understand about taxes is, like, what are ways in which you can save on taxes? That's not a conversation that people have enough, right? And so if you think about things like donations, right, given to charity, if you will, that is a tax write-off, meaning you can do good, you can donate money to a nonprofit organization or a cause that you really like, and that could be something that brings down your tax liability at the end of the year. And so that's an important thing to know, right? Because you may make different financial decisions if you know that there are tax implications that can help you. And so I think it's really, really important that everyone fully understand tax write-off, tax deductions, W-2 and W-4. That's just as a start in your career, but also that you could even learn some of this and study some of this in college. But those are four areas you really want to study and understand.
Yep, not fun. And you're an adult and have to fill those out.
Taxes are not fun at all.
Yeah. I just want to take a little break here and encourage anyone to ask any questions you may have so far. We've gone through a lot, so feel free to unmute yourself or write them in the chat, just a minute or so if anyone has any. We will also have the opportunity at the end as well. So if you come up with questions during the next half, a couple of questions, you can also ask them then.
Hi, how's it going? Thank you for speaking tonight. We appreciate you coming. And I kind of wanted to ask on an unrelated note, your current role at WeWork seems it's like a very big deal, and that's a big seat to be sitting in. I have been seeing some of the headlines coming through about WeWork, and I just wanted to ask how that role is currently going within the firm and in terms of the restructuring efforts going on. I'd love to hear more about that, and also, what your day to day kind of entails in that position.
Good questions. And so for those who are unaware, WeWork filed for bankruptcy in November 2023. And so we've been in a Chapter 11 restructuring since then. I think broadly speaking, it's for folks who don't know, who've never gone through a bankruptcy, have never experienced a bankruptcy. It's an interesting tool if you think about how to restructure a company to right size any debt or poor mistakes that were made from a financial perspective, and also make the company stronger on coming out of bankruptcy. And so that's what the company has been embarked on for these last several months. In terms of the impact to my role, I would say, generally speaking, my remit of the world is really focused on growth, right? And so in my role, I'm constantly tasked with and charged with figuring out how do we add more locations to the WeWork portfolio. And so, of course, a bankruptcy makes that really, really challenging, right? Because all of my counterparts that I'm looking to do a deal with, they are generally nervous or they have questions around a bankruptcy. And so it does present a lot of challenges, but it also presents a lot of opportunities because I get the chance to tell the story about the company and why doing a deal with WeWork coming out of bankruptcy would be a better or value add to someone I'm trying to do a deal with versus before. And so for me, as much as it poses a challenge, it also presents a great opportunity from a professional standpoint. I would say additionally, a lot of what my role is, I oversee underwriting. And so underwriting is just the practice of doing financial modeling behind a deal. And so I really enjoy understanding numbers and having numbers tell a story, but also helping to coach and mentor and advise more junior people in the organization, and help them develop their modeling skills and help them understand how to look at a deal, how to find the nuances, how to see beyond the numbers. And so I enjoy that as part of my career also. My day-to-day is just helping to mentor and manage and coach, junior people coming into the organization on my team, as they build up their expertise in modeling, how to build a memo, how to understand, how to look at a building, how to figure out a good deal versus a bad deal. And that is interesting no matter where the company is sort of in the economic life cycle, if you will. Great question, by the way.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll have some opportunity at the end again to ask any questions. We're going to continue with the financial advice portion. Femi, so in terms of long-term financial planning, you talked a little bit earlier about investments, but I want to delve into retirement accounts. Could you talk a little bit or elaborate on the differences between a 401k, an IRA, or other retirement options, and offer some advice on how one might go about these things?
Absolutely. Also, I'll use this as an opportunity because Nicole, I think I would love to hear more about your role on the student investment fund. Because I think it's related, and I'll tell you why. And I'll hand the floor over to you because I think what you're doing is awesome, and everyone on the call should hear about it. Because I wish I would have had the opportunity to be more engaged in this when I was at Trinity, and I wasn't. And so, for those who don't know, retirement investing is largely on our shoulders or your shoulder as an individual. So way back in the day, your parents and your grandparents had something called a pension. A pension essentially was a retirement account that was set up for them by their employer. And the employer at the time would make contributions to that account. And the idea was that that money, upon retirement, would then be given to the employee, the retired employee, and that money would be given to them on a monthly or some periodic basis, all throughout the rest of their lives. Essentially, it was a thank you for working for this company for 25 years. We're going to take care of your retirement and pay for your retirement, right? That is largely no longer the case. Most employers today are not offering a pension, meaning retirement is on you, all on you. Sounds kind of crazy. It is, right? But what that means today is that as an individual, you need to be very well versed in understanding investments, knowing what investments are, because essentially there are two main ways, or three main ways, if you will, in which you can save for retirement now. One is a 401k, which is an employer-sponsored account, meaning you can set up a 401k through your employer. Some employers will make cash contributions to your account. They'll match whatever money you put into your account. So that's one type. The other type of retirement account is an IRA, which is an individual IRA, a traditional IRA, and that is a retirement account that you can set up on your own, not through an employer. So you can save for retirement through those accounts. And that has tax implications as well, tax benefits, if you will. And the third account that you could have is a Roth IRA, which is similar to the first one I just said, but you can do that using post-tax dollars. So that's more of a tax nuance. And if you work in the nonprofit sphere, when you're a teacher or you work for government, it's called a 403B. And so that's the public equivalent of a 401k. In any event, all these options, 401k, IRA, 403B, Roth IRA, they all require you to know how to invest, because after you contribute money into these accounts, you can put the money in these accounts in the stock market, meaning you can invest that money so that it can grow faster over time and benefit from something called compound interest. But if you've never invested before or you don't know anything about investing, that becomes a pretty daunting task, right? So for the first time in your life, you now have to invest, And second, on top of that, you don't know anything about investing, right? And so I really think it's important and take opportunities in college to learn about investing, because your retirement and your future self, your old self, your 70-year-old self will largely, and the lifestyle you live at 65, 70 years old will be dependent on the decisions that you make early on in your career at 20 and 21. And so it becomes a pretty daunting task, and it's really important you think about it. But I'll segue to Nicole, because I love for Nicole to share what she's doing as extracurricular activity and the work that she's doing, because it's super important to building out the understanding of investing.
Yeah, so the investment fund has a sector called diversity in finance, and thank you, Femi, for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. Where we talk about all kinds of things related to finance, whether it's internships, also financial literacy. We're going over Roth IRAs for a lot of summer interns that want to get started on those things. And we learned about sales and trading, more about what Femi was talking about, internship prep, resume reviewing, and things of that sort, which are all really important and can be very helpful. It's open to anyone who wants to join. You have to just email the investment fund or Amna to get in contact to be put in the list. But you can learn more about all of these things that Femi has kind of talked about more in depth then in the later half of the semester. So thank you, Femi, for that.
And for Nicole, for those who don't know, what is the student investment fund? Where does the money come from? What do you guys invest in? What do you look at? What have you learned as being a member of the club?
Yeah, well, I'm only a sophomore, so I don't get to do all the cool stuff. I've been in the domestic equity center. I've been alternative investments, which I think some people are here on the call if they want to talk more about it. But basically, the investment fund gets endowment money, $700,000 to invest in long-term stocks and things of that sort. And students learn how to pitch stocks, learn more about different sectors, kind of familiarize themselves with what they would want to do after college, and kind of prepare for interviews. So we have different sectors. We also have investment banking prep that helps with that. We have women in finance, which helps women get more into the male-dominated field and feel more comfortable meeting others who have already been through that process. So overarching, it kind of just helps you get set if you want a career in finance or are interested in it. And it's really important because we don't have a business school here at Trinity. So this is kind of a way to get to know more about the sector.
And the reason why I wanted to highlight Nicole and the work of the Student Investment Fund is because whether or not, and I wish someone would have told me this or impressed this upon me more during my time in Trinity, whether or not you want to go into Wall Street, whether or not you have an interest in finance, unfortunately, finance will color and paint your life in some shape or form, right? Whether it be understanding how to do your own budget, credit cards, like I mentioned before, or having to invest for your retirement. And so whether or not you want to be on Wall Street or a career in finance, you should be at least interested in the student investment fund, because it's an opportunity to learn life skills, not just a career skill, right? So finance is beyond a career skill. Finance is a life skill. Financial literacy is a life skill that you need to have. Like riding a bike, you should be like reading. It's another form of literacy that you should be proficient in. And so the student investment fund, and from my understanding of what Nicole has shared, has moved leaps and bounds to really build out a platform, I think, to provide students with an opportunity to learn about investing, to learn about the capital markets in a controlled and safe environment, to ask the dumb questions. And it's better to learn, again, I can't emphasize this enough, it's better to learn these things now while you're in college versus having to learn it, at 22, 23, post-college, when you're bound to make some mistakes. And so definitely use this opportunity and use resources on campus like the Student Investment Fund, like your peers, like Nicole, to help you build up your financial literacy knowledge and build up your investing knowledge, because it's important. And don't be afraid to ask questions. A lot of what I have learned throughout my journey as a professional, but also in my own personal finance journey, has come with just asking questions, really, reaching out to somebody, having a friend I know who's done something and say, hey, I know you recently had this experience, or I know you recently dealt with this challenge. What did you do? Like, help me. The biggest thing you can do in life is buy time, right? And when I say buy time, meaning you're really trying to condense time, meaning how much can you use other people's experiences and other people's missteps, but also other people's good fortune to really take the skills that they've learned, take the knowledge that they've learned and apply it to you earlier on. So if someone has gone through, talk about taxes. If someone has gone through an audit in which they've had to go through an audit with the IRS, they may have made a mistake, and the IRS is now coming back and asking questions and saying they owe taxes. It's a pretty challenging experience. It's a pretty frightening experience for most people. Most people who've been audited don't forget it, right? But if you know that you have a friend, a family member, or anybody that's gone through an audit, why not ask them questions about it before you go through it or while you're going through it, right? Because they may help you figure out best practices, how to avoid some mistakes they made, maybe some good things that they did to help beat the audit or help have a more favorable outcome to the audit. And so the number one thing you can do, especially when it comes to money management and personal finances, is ask questions. Like, be a sponge, be an open book, just ask, because the number one thing you're trying to do is condense time, right? You're really trying to condense time so that your path up the learning curve can be as short as possible. And trying to do everything in your own and trying to be a hero or a shero in this sense is not the way to go about it when it comes to personal finances. You really need to use your community and use your friends and family, your network, because that is ultimately how you're going to get the most knowledge and acquire the most knowledge, I think, as it relates to this topic.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of resources, Trinity offers some, but do you have any particular books or tools that you would advocate for enhancing one's financial literacy or overall career looking and things of that sort?
Yeah, so there's one book that's like, I hate it. I hate to say it because it's so cliche and everyone says it, but I will say it is a good book, right? Like, the author has some questionable things, but like the actual book is good. The name of the book is called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And it's a tried and true, it's like a great like financial literacy, personal finance 101 kind of book. And so the book covers a lot of things in a very high level, but it's a really good primer and it's a really good 101 and entry level book to really understanding personal money management. And so it's called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I think I'm mispronouncing his last name, but if you look up on Amazon or any online or in-person bookstore, the name of the title is called Rich Dad Poor Dad. Another good book is written by the chief investment officer of Yale's endowment. And the name of the book, I believe, is called Pioneering Portfolio Management. But essentially, it's a book he wrote around personal finance and investing. And he talks about how to think about investments, how to start investing, diversification, stocks versus mutual funds versus ETFs, which are exchange traded funds versus index funds. He goes through it all. And so if you're thinking about investing for the first time, that's a really good book to pick up. And it's a good kind of 1-2 punch with Rich Dad Poor Dad. And so the author of that book is David Swensen. I believe the title is Pioneering Portfolio Management.
Awesome. Thank you. I would definitely take that second one into consideration.
Yes,
And
I read that as a senior, I believe. And I still have a copy of it now. It's a great book.
yeah, for sure. So shifting more to the Q&A portion of this call, Femi, some students have submitted a few questions ahead of time and would love your input. So just want to go over those before we wrap up. First one being, what is one thing you would recommend a recent grad to do for financial independence?
One thing I'd recommend a recent grad do for financial independence. That's a good question. So I'll say this, but I understand that again, this is not financial advice, and everyone's financial situation will differ. But if you really want to exert some financial independence and you really want to get the practice of managing bills, right? You need to have some bills in your name because you need to get that experience of paying bills and understanding what that feels like and having responsibility. And so a low cost bill to take on your own financial independence was probably your cell phone bill. A lot of us, a lot of students stay on their parents' plan for as long as they can. Trust me, I'm not knocking it. That's money you don't have to spend. Like, the friends and family plan is the best plan ever. As much as you could put off having to pay your own cell phone bill for as long as you can, you should. However, if you did want to take on some financial independence, I do think a cell phone bill is a good place to start. And so establishing your own line, understanding how it is, to establish, a phone line, the kind of questions you need to have, the information you need to provide them, understanding a billing cycle, understanding how to read a bill to spot when you're being overcharged. That is all a good practice to have. And cell phone bills are, generally speaking, can range anywhere between like $50 and maybe $150, depending on the type of cell phone provider and the line that you have. And so fairly low numbers in that respect. And so it's a good kind of low frills way to exert and to gain a little bit of financial independence and also build up the skill of paying a bill, but also having a budget, and bake that cost into your budget. And so I recommend starting with the phone bill.
That one's a little hard to hear. I don't know if I'm ready for that one.
I understand it. Believe me, I understand it.
Second question is, what types of bank accounts should I save various funds in? Examples like retirement, college funds for our kids, rainy day fund, taxes, vacation. So I guess the different types of saving accounts you could have.
Yeah, so different type of accounts. And so there are probably four big accounts that you need to have, right? So the first thing that everyone should have starting in college is a checking account. From the minute you're a freshman, you should have your own checking account. Absolutely need a checking account. And if you don't have one, your homework and my charge to you after you get off of this call starting tomorrow, call your parent or guardian and figure out how you can open your first checking account. You need a checking account. A checking account is essentially the gateway to the world of finance. There are very few things that you can do without a checking account. It's really hard to start investing without a checking account because the money that you transfer into your brokerage account comes from, you guessed it, your checking account. It's really hard to pay bills without a checking account because they need a source of money to draw from for you to pay a bill. So like you need a checking account to do most things in the realm of personal finances and just to live. And so that's the first account you absolutely want to set up and you want to have. The second account you want to have is a savings account, right? And you need to have a savings account that you use to put emergency money in. And emergency money, a rainy day fund, a sugar honey iced tea fund. That just means that in case things go wrong, where can you have a couple of dollars that you can pull from so that it doesn't break you financially? And it's really important that you have a savings account that does that. And so that's the second important account that I think you should have. The third account you should have, we talked about it before, is a retirement account, right? And so that could be in the form of a 401k, 403b, IRA, Roth IRA. It's important you have a retirement account because, as I mentioned before, retirement and your livelihood as a retiree is on you. It's sitting on your shoulders. No one is coming to save you. If you remember nothing else from this talk, just remember, no one is coming to save you. The government is not coming to save you. No one is coming to save you. Retirement is 100% on you. So the earlier you start saving and investing towards your retirement, the better for you. And so that is the third important. So that's the fourth important account that you want to have is a retirement fund, right? Is some sort of retirement account in which you're contributing, whether it be a couple of dollars or a lot of dollars to on some semi-frequent basis, because that will help you with your long-term goals. And then other than that, after you have those four established, there's a lot of other things you can do, right? Like you can set up different savings accounts for different goals. You can have like a savings account for traveling. You can have a savings account, like whatever your vice is. Like let's say your vice is video games, for example. You could have a savings account where you save money so that you can buy the newest console when it comes out, when the PlayStation 6 comes out. You can have a savings account for video games for that, for example. Or let's say your vice is clothing, whatever it may be, right? You can have a savings account for those things. But I don't think you get there until you have the primary four, which is a checking account, an emergency savings account, a retirement fund, and I left one off. My fourth one was, what did I just leave off? It's old age is kicking in, sorry. It'll come back to me, but those are the four primary accounts.
Awesome. Before we conclude our discussion with Femi, want to open the floor to you all. I encourage you to share any questions you may have, whether it's about the topics we covered or other unrelated matters. So again, feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself or submit it in the chat.
And I'll chime in again. The name of the book by David Swenson is called Unconventional Success. That's the name of the investing book by David Swenson. And David Swenson, for those who don't know, is the chief investment officer of Yale's endowment. And the book is called Unconventional Success.
All right, Femi, do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom for students?
Sure. I would say the biggest thing that I hope that everyone can get from this conversation is that it's important to understand financial literacy is a skill, and like any skill, you need to practice. Like you wouldn't be a tennis player and not practice, your backhand and your follow through on a daily basis, right? Like you have to practice like any skill, like riding a bike. You have to practice riding a bike if you're going to be really good at riding a bike, like ice skating, anything. And so financial literacy and personal finance is the same way. It's a skill. And so the more often you do it, the more often you talk about it, and the earlier and the sooner you practice it, the better you will be at doing it. And so for those of you who are in college, freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors, start taking the steps now, start budgeting, start doing small micro investing, start to understand and read up about the stock market, start to understand taxes, understand W-2, W-4, start to build a muscle memory now for managing your personal finances. Nicole, I know you're going to hate this. Get off of your parents' phone bill, take on the phone bill. You got to get all of the small minor repetitions and practice to managing money and managing bills and personal finance, because it's a skill, and it's impossible to expect anyone or any human to, at age 21, 22, to graduate and magically know how to do it all, right? Know how to do taxes, know how to invest, know the 401k. Like, it's just a lot to take on. And so the earlier that you can take on these things, the better. The second big takeaway is ask for help.
Pause real quick. Somebody raised their hand. It was Destin. He had a question.
Okay.
I did, but I was going to let you finish so you could finish, and then I could ask the question after. I don't want to break your train of thought.
Sure. I'll finish the thought quickly. The second big takeaway I would say is ask for help. Absolutely ask for help. Talk to your parents, talk to friends, talk to family members, especially folks that that have done or experienced what it is you're about to do, whether that be investing or whether that be real estate or buying your first home, or whether that be budgeting. Talk about it, right? Like, talk about money with friends. When you're in your dorm room, late at night, you can talk about anything. Ask people about money. Talk about money. Talk about budgeting. Talk about saving. Talk about investing. You have to normalize the conversation around money. Otherwise, it becomes super taboo, becomes this black box, and then everyone gets very skittish and gets very weird about it. You want to break that mold, break it early. You want to be very confident and comfortable in talking about money, because it is important to have that conversation and also to be willing and able to ask for help. Destin, it's on you. What's your question?
All right, thank you for your time. Quick question. So I don't work in finance. I work in financial technology, and actually on the other side of you, I work for a financial regulator, regulating member firms. I work for FINRA, so we regulate underwriting. But question to you, and how to get involved in your nonprofit. I think it's a great venture you're taking on, and I think, I don't know what anyone else, but I'm definitely interested in how to participate in such a good venture that I think will benefit a lot of people.
Justin, I appreciate the interest. You can reach out to me in my personal email address. You can leave it in the chat after. You can also go to the website, which is www.dream-usa.org. And there you can find a link to request information to volunteer. And you can also find information about events that we're putting on. I'm constantly looking for volunteers and other folks to get involved in the organization. That's the only way that it can grow, but also spread the gospel of financial literacy and financial information is to go through and sharing this kind of one by one, each one teach one, if you will. And so again, the website is www.dream-usa.org for more information.
Thank you. I didn't say it before, but my name is Destin. I'm class of 2015.
Awesome, Destin. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
All right, thank you all for being a part of this insightful discussion with Femi. And Femi, thank you so much. We appreciate all your valuable insights that are hard to hear, but good to know. And I'll leave it up to Lori to close us off.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Especially thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you so much, Femi. I greatly appreciate it. This series is really important to me. I think back of like all the financial mistakes I made since graduating college and like learning things, and especially one tidbit. I wish I had started saving for retirement earlier and like learning about like a Roth IRA and like a 401, a 403B. And I think especially when you're looking for employers, knowing who really has a good benefit package is really important to know. So I want to continue these series and I definitely want your input. So I'll be sending an email tomorrow with you guys filling out a survey. And I want you to be honest of what do you want, if you want to extend on this topic, if you want to be more specific on certain things. So I'm very excited and thank you all so much for coming out tonight. I greatly appreciate it.
Also, before we break, I want to give and recognize Nicole. Nicole was an awesome moderator. Thank you for asking the tough questions and thank you for providing people an outlet to get more information. Again, and huge shout out to you for the work that you're doing in the Student Investment Fund. And I know you have a bright future ahead of you.